Good afternoon and welcome to another Cat Chat. My name is Griff Rogers, the president of our Catastrophe Services, and I thank you all for joining us today. While this is our second Cat Chat, this one is unique as we're not only reaching out to our CAT employees, but also our global employees, as well as our some more valued customers. Here we are 25 days into the hurricane season, and we've already broken the earliest C-name storm ever going into a storm season. In comparison, we are still 2 months away from when the D storm formed last year, which was Hurricane Dorian on August 28th. But it's just not the aggressive hurricane season that has everyone on the edge of their seat. It's everything that has led up to where we are now. COVID, the economic downturn as a result of the pandemic, and more recently, the civil unrest that we've seen throughout the U.S. These are times that are not normal to us, and I hope that we'll never see them again. Despite where we are, we will press forward during this time of uncertainty, and I cannot think of a better time for Crawford & Company's core values within Restore to resonate in the time we are in now. We have faced adversity before, and just as in the past, our resiliency will prevail. Our guest today, Jason Caldwell, is very well aware of adversity and the actions needed to overcome them. Many of you all have had the pleasure of meeting him, as he was our keynote speaker at our CAT conference this past February in Dallas, Texas. I, as well as several others, have been very fortunate enough to know Jason over the past 2 years as he participated in our leadership executive training program at Emory University. For those that have not met Jason, let me share a little bit about his background. He's a world record holding athlete. He's a professional adventurer, founder of Latitude 35, which is an organization that engages in leadership development for top business schools and organizations throughout the world. Born and raised in San Francisco, Jason was introduced to rowing while attending the Sonoma State University after sustaining a baseball injury. His success at the college rowing level earned him an invitation to row for the Vesper Boat Club's prestigious elite team in Philadelphia. After retirement from Vesper, Jason began his career in leadership development by using the sport of rowing to teach managers and other influencers how to lead effectively. With all the leadership training under his belt, Jason was inspired to recruit and train a 4-man team in the world's toughest race, the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge, which is a 3,000-mile unassisted rowing race across the Atlantic. Jason, welcome to today's session of Crawford Cat Chat, and welcome back to Crawford & Company. I know the last time you and I were together in Dallas, neither of us could have even imagined the times that we've encountered since then. And I know that this pandemic has impacted you and your team with the recent cancellation of the race that you were doing across the Pacific this month. How are you and your race team members doing during this time?
Yeah, thanks, Griff. I appreciate you inviting me out here. I'm excited to be able to speak with everybody today. Yeah, as Griff alluded to, we had to cancel our latest adventure, which was a row from San Francisco to Hawaii, a Pacific rowing race that our team had been training for the last 1.5 years. And we had to recently, over the last 3 weeks, pull the plug on that for obvious reasons with everything that's going on in this world. We just weren't able to execute it safely. And so that's been a tough pill to swallow, but you know, a lot of things we're going to be talking about today, I think, is about you know, adaptability and being malleable. So I'll certainly share some of those lessons. Just by way of further context, and Griff did a great job introducing me. Latitude 35 is a company that I own and started a handful of years ago. We're really divided up into 2 parts: a leadership development part where we go and train companies such as Crawford we've been working with for a few years now, and that's been great, doing leadership training courses and teaching people how to build high performance teams using an experience as a metaphor. So with the Crawford program through Emory University, we actually take the participants rowing on the Chattahoochee River. So I'm happy to say that Griff made it through that you know, and still here to talk about it. So he experienced that. And we do these types of experiential programs, whether it be rowing or sailing, all over the world. We do about 50 to 60 of these types of programs a year. And I mention that because it is relevant, because I have been in the Crawford family, or I like to think so, for the last few years, and that is relevant. The other side of the company that also Griff alluded to was this racing team. a handful of years ago, as we were starting to build this company out, I really wanted to be an authentic company that was talking about building teams and leading teams from the perspective of experience. I didn't want to just be a company that said, hey, surveys show this about leadership, or, these books said this. I want to be a company that was going out and doing this, testing our philosophies on how to build and maintain high performance, make those mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and then come back and be able to share those experiences with our clients, which is what we've been doing for the last few years with Crawford. And so those examples, so we've decided to build a racing team where every year, and at this point myself, I recruit, train, and participate in one big epic race or world record attempt. And you heard from Griff, and the racing that I'm going to talk about and use as a metaphor a lot today is rowing across the Atlantic Ocean. Now, we've actually rowed across the Atlantic Ocean in the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge twice. The first time in 2015 and 2016. And this is, you can kind of see on this slide here, a little route, which is 3,000 miles. It starts in the Canary Islands off the coast of Northwest Africa, and it goes those 3,000 miles southwest. And in 2015 and 16, we made that trek. But 600 miles into that row, this is a 4-person race. 2 of our teammates had to be evacuated due to illness and injury. And so there was a sailboat that evacuated. Myself and my remaining teammate, Tom Magroff, who many of you also know, decided to press forward and continue. We finished the race. We took 11th place out of 26 teams, but we finished the race in 51 days, breaking the American record as the fastest 4-man team to ever row across the Atlantic Ocean, because we started as a 4-man, so we had to finish as a 4-man. Not being completely satisfied with that, although absolutely proud of what Tom and I did, I decided to re-enter the race the very following year, the 2016 and 17 year. So I retrained a team, Tom being the manager of that team, but not rowing, not electing to row. And I put a new team together, and we trained them, really learning from a lot of the many mistakes that I made. We'll kind of talk about those later on. And we re-entered the race. And here's a picture of that team as we're sprinting on the last few days of this race. And there's 3 of us rowing with a 4th person in the cabin. And we not only won the race that year in 2017, but we broke the world record, a 13-year-old world record. It's the fastest team to ever row across the Atlantic Ocean. Here's some pictures of us, Tom and I, at the finish line of that first year. And you can see all the people coming out to see the 2 guys that did something that nobody thought was possible, to finish this race with just 2 of us. And here is the world record, and kind of a picture in the background of us the second year, breaking the world record at 35 days, 14 hours and 3 minutes. And I say all that stuff as just kind of a way to kind of preface what we're going to be talking about today, and how I'm going to use the experience of these 2 races, although I've done many other adventures as well, but kind of focusing on these 2 adventures and the experience I had, and related to some of the things that you guys are currently going through in your cycle of the year right now. So I'm going to toss it back to you, Griff. I hope that wasn't too lengthy, but I'll toss it back to you now.
No, not at all. And we look forward to much more, Jason. So appreciate that feedback. As you're aware, we have several questions that we've prepared for you. So let's go ahead and get to the first question. How important is it to be adaptable, and how do you think that can translate to a life of an adjuster?
Yeah, we all know that being adaptable is important. So it's of the utmost importance. I think really what I would like to talk about here is what is being adaptable? What is adaptability? And in my mind, being adaptable is about confidence. Being confident that you can go from a plan that you had spent a lot of time on and making your plan, and going from that to a half-baked, less than perfect or planned out execution. And that's a tough thing to do. And, I'm reminded of we have many of those. When you're in an adventure, nothing goes according to plan. I mean, we're in plan B, C, and D as you guys are too. I mean, how many times has plan A worked out? I mean, it's very, very rare that happens. So you're constantly being adaptable. Many examples that I could use, but none probably more obvious than the one where at 600 miles into our first row, a rowing race that we were trying to win and break a world record, not only were we not on pace to win it, but we're losing two of our teammates. They're being evacuated, and it's left with myself and Tom. And talk about having to go to a plan B, and then getting tossed around by a hurricane that was hit off the coast of West Africa. I mean, we were down to plans D, E, and F at that point. But the reason why we were able to successfully navigate that is because we had confidence in kind of leaning into these other plans that we weren't prepared for. And there's nothing wrong with not being prepared for those plans, but you know, there is you have to have confidence that you can execute that even if you're not completely sure how it's going to work. And I think that that's what adaptability is all about, is building that confidence. There's no better confidence, of course, than experience, and that's going to build it. We'll talk more about experience later on. So.
Well, on that note, Jason, based on your experiences, do you have any tips on how adjusters can stay motivated out in the field?
Yeah, motivation's a big thing in my world, and absolutely with you as well, and everyone that's listening here. The way I look at motivation is your ability to see into the future. And so I think I'm going to challenge everyone to think about motivation in a different way. I think a lot of us think about motivation as a zero-sum game. We're either motivated to do something, I can do this, I'm going to do it, here it goes, I'm going to execute this. Or I'm not motivated, I don't want to do this, or I can't do this, or it's impossible. All right, I don't believe that motivation is either one or the other. It's not a zero-sum game. How I look at it is kind of the inverse. I try and of course you could imagine that when you're on the ocean in a small rowboat for over a month, your motivation ebbs and flows. And when you're in a high motivation, when I'm personally motivated, I'm feeling good, I can see a week out into the future, and I can confidently say that within this next week, we're going to be able to do 108 or 850 miles, let's say. But the next day, after getting beat up by a tough evening of rowing all night, being wet and you know, sleep deprived, believe me, that next day I'm not thinking that way. And sometimes as my motivation goes down, I can only see up to that day. Let's just try to get 70 miles today. And sometimes it's even worse. I'm just trying to get through my 2-hour rowing session. Let's just try to get, you know, 10 miles in on this. And sometimes it's literally just putting that oar in the water and taking that next stroke. I cannot see further than that next stroke. But what motivation is how far in the future you can be optimistic and confident about what you're doing. All right, that's what it is. So if you're highly motivated, you're confident far down in the future. If you're not highly motivated, then you're just confident about that next stroke or that next step or that next day. But the confidence still has to be there. And that's really what I think, if I were giving you advice about staying motivated, the motivation always is there. It's just how far in the future can you stay motivated? Not am I motivated or I'm not motivated. I hope that makes sense. And, you know, here's some pictures right here. These were pictures of sailboats coming kind of mid-ocean on us. And I like these pictures because they're real and they're authentic. And, you know, you can see my teammates and, you know, we're looking haggard, and the picture on the top right, you can see me on the left side there. I lost 40 pounds in both these rows. My teammates losing, you know, similar types of weights. You don't have that motivation on day 26, you know, for the whole thing. You're not thinking about the finish line at that point. You're thinking about that next stroke, and that's okay. And I challenge you to be okay with that. So.
That's good. It's real good. Jason, as I mentioned earlier, you recently attended our CAT conference as our keynote speaker. Can you provide us with some insight on any conversations you had with the adjusters that you met there?
Yeah, I was very fortunate to be able to attend that, and of course speak at it. Was an honor. But I spent a couple days there, Griff, and we spent some time together. Had some good food for sure. But I got to speak to a lot of people who were, of course, you know, very inspired and wanted to share their stories. And one of my favorite things is listening to other people's stories. But one of the common themes that I was just blown away with, and admittedly, like, I don't live a life of an adjuster. You know, I've been learning it over the last few years as I've engaged with Crawford and through their leadership training. But, you know, this is not my world. That's your world. But the similarities, which people pulled out when I was on stage telling the stories. They wanted to say, you know what, I could see myself in your story, and here is why. And one of the things I really saw as a similarity, or people were sharing with me, was your guys' yearly cycle of prepping for disaster season, and then getting into disaster season, and then getting out of it, all to just prep again. And I think that looking at your careers and what you do and your passion as a cycle, and not a start, a middle, and an end, is incredibly healthy, and is something that was reinforced when I listened to adjusters speaking to me, that I truly have to think about my careers and my adventures as not a beginning, middle, and end, but a constant circle of prepping, and prepping my team and myself mentally, emotionally, physically, getting into that season for us, which is a race, and getting through that race. And then at the end of it, it's not done. You got to celebrate that journey. You got to celebrate what you did and what you accomplished, and then get ready for the next one. And I think it was a great reminder. And I even wrote it down here. It's like there was this kind of juxtaposition between this impending difficulty as you approach the hurricane season, which you're in now, but also this kind of aggressive enthusiasm to get the job done, and to get it done very, very well. And again, it really kind of, that laid on me in a heavy way, that am I preparing my team for that same thing? Hey, it's going to be difficult. We cannot take this lightly. But at the same time, like, we should be enthusiastic about what we're about to jump into, not this impending doom, oh my God, I just want to get it over with, but to lean into it. That was inspirational for me. And I think one of the reasons why I love giving keynotes so much is because when people come and share their stories with me, either that night at the cocktail reception or at dinner, or the next day at breakfast, they saw themselves in my story, which includes me, giving me a chance to hear their story. And I think that's what resonated the most with me.
That's good. Thanks for sharing that, Jason. Moving on to the next question. Change is happening constantly in today's society, as well as our industry, particularly with us entering hurricane season. Ken Tolson recently shared his disruptor email to several of us, and within it, he used a quote that said, "Rough waters make skilled captains." I'm not sure if that was born from Ken or not. I'm sure I'm gonna hear from him afterwards, taking credit for it, but regardless, it really resonated with me. From what you've learned on your adventures and in your career, what are some of the ways you approach change, uncharted territory, and even unfamiliar tasks?
Yeah. I'd say one word is, and then I'll elaborate on it, it's diversity. Having a diverse team or network or support system is so important. It allows you, diversity allows you to access different perspectives. And you might not think that we had a lot of diversity in these pictures, because you see everywhere you go, you see, 4 white guys rowing in a boat, but let me tell you, our backgrounds were as diverse as can be. And, we've got some guys that are, driving a Tesla, and another guy that doesn't even own a car and spends most of his time, walking without shoes on. And that sounds funny, and it is kind of, and that's a funny juxtaposition, a funny range. But when you're on the water and when you're in crisis, accessing those different perspectives is really the way to make an unfamiliar environment feel familiar. I mean, the ocean and these types of crises and adventures in your world, I mean, even if you're in this world for a long time, you're probably still seeing things that you've never seen before. I can only imagine that you are. That's certainly for me. I've done a lot of ocean rowing, I've done a lot of adventuring, and I'm constantly being shocked by the challenges that come up for us. But if you've got as much background from a team or a support system that you can have, for somebody else, it might feel more familiar, in which case you can lean on that person. I mean, at Lab 35, I'm technically the captain of the team, but I'm not the only leader out there, and I'm not the only one making decisions. I mean, quite on the contrary, we all have specialties. We're all leveraging those specialties from everybody else, and oftentimes I'm not the one making that final decision. If it's about routing, it's Angus. You see in this picture, in the middle picture with the blue shirt holding the green wire. He's our router, all right? And that was the deal with that. if it's talking about whether we can physically row 3 up and we're going to row the next, half a day 3 up, it's the guy on the left-hand side pushing the boat on the trailer there. That's Matt Brown. That's who's going to make that decision. And so it was really a team effort. And when we're talking about kind of approaching change and uncharted territories, being able to access as many perspectives as possible, whether that be through teammates, a support system, or a number of people, that is going to be, I think, is going to set yourself up for success.
That's a good point, and definitely important in the world we live in today, about just coming together and working as a team.
Yeah.
Jason, this question is somewhat similar to the last one, but with your experiences out at sea, do you have any advice on how people can prepare for the uncertainty, whether that's either physically, mentally, or both?
Yeah. So first, this is just my perspective on uncertainty, but for me, uncertainty is a type of fear. It's a low-lying, constant fear, and it's a fear that once it becomes certain, whatever the uncertainty is, and once it becomes certain what you need to do, there's a fear that you won't be up to the task, that you will be inferior to that task. That's what uncertainty brings out, that uneasiness in us and that low level of fear. And I think that the way to combat that type of kind of anxiety or fear about uncertainty is to focus on our failures. And we've heard that before. And here's some pictures of my teammates on our second row. You can see close up some of their pictures. But we've heard this, and I'll use this as an example. We've heard this, we've heard this cliche a lot. It's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up, all right? We've heard this all before. I find that to be a highly, highly unproductive cliche. The reality is, in the world that we live in, nobody cares how many times you get back up. I mean, they don't, because there are some resilient people out here. We live in a tough, tough world. And in order to survive in this world and to thrive in this world, you need to be a very resilient human being. So to get back up is just the first step. What I would challenge everyone to do is to spend time analyzing how you got knocked down in the first place, or in other words, your failures. Talk about your failures. Talk as a team about what things went right, but also really get comfortable about talking about what things went wrong. And this is not comfortable for anybody, including myself. But let me tell you, a lot, and for those of you that heard me talk about my speeches, or in my speeches, a lot of you have heard, I'm constantly talking about the things that I did wrong, the things that I failed as a captain and as a leader, because those are the things that we're going to learn, so that when you do get back up, you are a tougher, smarter, harder target to knock down. And so that's what we really need to focus on. And people think that they focus on their failures. I mean, I'm talking really dig into them and be in a safe space where you can talk that with other people without feeling that you're being judged or without judging others. But really being able to have those types of conversation is going to be able to combat that uncertainty. And that would be my suggestion for that.
Well, that's good feedback. Jason, thanks for answering all those questions. We're now going to pull some questions from the audience. The first question I see is, with most of us working remotely, what advice would you give us how to separate our professional with our personal lives?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I get oftentimes. This is a tough thing that I'm still working on, and we all constantly are working on. I mean, when I started these adventures, and I wasn't married. I hadn't met my wife yet. Then this first row that I was talking about, where Tom and I finished it on our own, I got married 3 weeks before that. So the opportunity cost of all these things rose, and now I've got a 10-month-old. And so I did leave for the Pacific a few weeks ago, but we will be doing it next year. And I will be leaving behind, my son and my wife, and of course the rest of my family. So I'm constantly dealing with this, and I'm doing things that are dangerous. You're doing things that are dangerous. Just even traveling right now is a sense of anxiety about it, of course. So I'm well versed in this, and I think that how I've always talked about balancing those things is every decision you make, a decision to do an adventure, row an ocean, decision to take on the career that you take on, every single decision you make, even where you're going to go to dinner that night, you're either consciously or unconsciously measuring two different things. You're measuring suffering and sacrifice. How much will I suffer to do this? And it doesn't have to be physical suffering. It could be a mental and emotional anguish as well, but there will be a level of suffering. And what am I going to have to give up? What's the sacrifice? Now, for me and these ocean rowing, I'm trained up, so the suffering is great, but it's not as great as somebody who's not trained. So, I can get through it a little bit easier. But the sacrifice for me has changed greatly over the last few years because I am giving up time spent with my family, maybe missing my son's first words or his first steps, which I might have done if I was in the Pacific right now, because he's getting very, very close. All right. And so I'm constantly measuring those two things. And let me tell you something. If you are consciously looking at those two things when you're making decisions between taking on a job, taking it on the road, which I know a lot of you are spending a lot of time on that road, or deciding that's not what I want to do and I'm going to stay home, you need to measure those suffering and sacrifice. And once one or both of those things reaches a threshold that you are no longer willing to do, that is when it's too much. And that's when you need to either have a healthy quit, as I call it, and not take that job or not take that assignment or not take that adventure, or you need to pivot to something that's going to be able to lower that under the threshold that you're comfortable with. And those things I'm measuring all the time, suffering and sacrifice, and always happy to elaborate on that, later on if someone's curious.
That's good. Good stuff. The next question from the audience is this: how has your consulting business been impacted by COVID-19? And how have you adapted to maintain a relationship with your clients and partners during these challenging times?
Great question.
You can use us as an example if you need to, Jess.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a great question, and yes, I've been extremely. Our whole company has been extremely affected by this. Obviously, on the racing side, you can see we're not racing this year, but on the consulting side and the development and training side, I mean, I'm going to be quite honest with you. Almost all of our programs got either knocked away or pushed to next year. And we're in the business of experiential leadership. I mean, we're very tactile, hands-on, putting teams together, and that's just not happening right now. And we've had a lot of success for the last handful of years, and we just saw all of our programs get canceled or pushed. And I've been reaching out to everybody, and we got an overwhelming consensus to say we still want access to your knowledge and your team's knowledge. And how can we do that? And of course, it started with things like this, webinars, virtual speeches, and we started getting comfortable with that a few months ago. But then we started building it out, and we started finding ways. We really dug into our own philosophy, and we learned a lot about ourselves. We said, what makes our program so successful? Why do people like them? And we started to find out that certain things that we did throughout the length of our time spent with our client, it's not just the rowing and the sailing. Of course, that part's great, but we do other things that we could still bring to our teams virtually or at least remotely. So we've been putting together virtual experience packages where they're spending time with us on the screen, and nobody's a stranger to screen time anymore. But beforehand, they're getting something delivered to their house in a leadership box. And inside that box is going to be the materials that they're going to need to run a program with us virtually. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but it's been a great way to stay connected. And we found out that now more than ever, maybe, people need to feel connected in a very unconnected world. And we can still that's what we teach. We teach how to leverage human emotion. And we need that leveraging of human emotion more than ever right now. And so we have brought our philosophies through this thing that we call Leadership Box and through our teachings virtually now on how you can still build those ties that bind us together, even if we're talking through a screen. And one day this will end and we will be able to be back together, but it may not be exactly the same. But I'll tell you what, human beings will always be human beings. We need to feel part of something greater than ourselves. And so that's really what we pivoted. We taught ourselves that if we, this is a great leadership lesson for us too, is how can we bring our lessons virtually, because the reality is this is a certain aspect of this is here to stay. And of course, we like to believe that we're authentic with all of our clients. You know, we don't even take some clients when we find out that we're really just a box they're trying to check off. You know, hey, well, we did a leadership training course. That's great. We don't do it. We don't take those clients anymore. We used to have to because we needed the money, to be honest, but now we don't. We take people like Crawford, who have in part of their values and their beliefs are passionate about building high performance teams and delivering a type of service that's unprecedented. And that is why I'll do whatever it takes to stay connected, including this webinar, which has been a blast just to set up this last month.
Thanks for sharing this. That's good, Jason. Our next question says, what advice can you give new adjusters on how to manage stress effectively as we handle our workload to meet quality and client expectations during these times?
Managing stress is a tough thing, something I'm still doing a lot of. And I'll tell you just how I manage stress personally. You know, and some people are gonna maybe roll their eyes at this, and other people are gonna say, well, I even already do this stuff. But meditation, exercise, getting good sleep, drinking lots of water, staying connected with people, even if it's on the screen. And with regards to meditation, breathing exercises, this is going to sound really, really weird. Cold showers. If anyone's ever heard of the Wim Hof method, I would highly, highly recommend looking into this. These are all things that give you energy throughout the day and lower your stress. And again, happy to go into these things in detail if anyone, and I'm going to provide my email at the end of this. If anyone wants to get in contact with me, I love speaking to people one-on-one. But those things that I talked about right there are so important. All right, it's not enough to just say, I'm just not going to be stressed today. You need to have enough sleep. You need to be hydrated. You need to be breathing properly. And I suggest meditation, but if you're not into that, taking deep breaths, slowing your breaths to 3 breaths a minute will alleviate stress. Cold showers does a big deal where you just under that cold shower, take a regular shower and then turn it on cold and stay under there for 1 minute, extend it to 2 minutes on the second week, 3 minutes on the third week, and watch how you feel and how you approach the day or the evening after you do that. I guarantee you'll feel the difference. And then if you have more questions, going into the Wim Hof method is a fantastic way to alleviate that stress.
Jason, one more question from the audience. Jason, are there any quotes you live by? Those that when you're just not feeling it that day, what are some that help you get motivated, maybe even from a movie or a book?
Wow, well, actually, that's a great segue into the next 2 slides I want to show you. But and I will do that stuff. I'm an avid reader, first of all, and I don't know how much of the background you can see, but all these books are actually real books that I've actually read. I've been, since a kid, I've been an avid reader, and I love nonfiction, but my true passion is classic literature, and I find that I get a lot of inspiration from literature. And but I'm gonna share these 2 slides because I think this is perfect. This first one is, I'm gonna read it out loud so you don't have to concentrate on reading it. But it says, and once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what this storm's all about. Here's what I got, and I use this quote a lot, and I think it's one of the most inspirational for me. Here's the deal. If you want to be an individual contributor to your company, your career, your family, whatever it is, you can do it. I mean, companies are full of individual contributors. They punch the clock every morning, they work hard, they do their job, then they punch out and they forget about it. And that's fine. And we need people like that, obviously. But if you're trying to do something more, if you truly want to give all of yourself to something, whether that be your career, your clients, your company, your family, if you choose to give all of yourself to something, then you are also choosing to be completely changed by that something. All right. The reality is, when Tom and I left the shores in that first race, 51 days later, we came into Antigua at the finish line. We're not the same people. I'm a different person now. Tom is also different. We're different. We gave everything we had to that endeavor, and we are changed by it. All right. That's why love changes people. They give their heart, they give everything to it. They are no longer the same person they were before they met that significant other. Not everyone feels comfortable doing that. All right. Some people are not willing to have themselves be changed by an event, by a career, by a company, by a loved one. And that's okay. But that is what you are doing when you give all of yourself to something. And I'll take it one step further. That is what you are asking people that you're working with to do if you are asking them to give all of themselves. If you say to someone, I need all of you today, I need everything you've got today, I need 100%, you are asking them to do this, to be changed by it. And that, by the way, is not a casual ask. It's a very serious ask. That's what this quote reminds me of, and that's why it's one of my favorite quotes. I'll go ahead and finish up with this one too, because it's a short one that we've all heard, but I'll give you my perspective. If you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do things you've never done. This goes into, malleability, adaptability, all the things that we were talking about. We've heard this statement many, many times, I'm sure. But this is the reality. Between race 1 and race 2, I wasn't going to race it a second time, by the way. It had taken everything from me. But when I was convinced I was going to do it again, by our sponsors, who at that time were Carlisle, great company, manufacturing company, that support us in such an awesome way. When that CEO said, I want you to do it again, after I realized that he was right, I did want to do it again. I mean, this is what they wanted to do, is build that strongest team, get the best guys, strongest guys, biggest athletes, and go out and crush it the next year. But I didn't. I was so obsessed with this whole thing of giving all of myself. I need to build a team full of people that were willing to do that as well, that were willing to be changed by the event that we were going to go through, willing to go through plans B, C, D, and E, and all those things that we talked about already. And so I built the team off of that feeling, the feeling that Tom and I had in that first row, where we worked harder because we were more afraid of letting each other down than we were of the elements. I built a team for that. And believe me, that's not what your sponsors want to hear. They want you to hear that you're going to go ahead and get the strongest guys. But I so believed in this stuff that we're talking about today. I so, in my heart, believed in it. I was willing to stake my entire company and reputation on building a team full of the right people, not the best people. And there's a difference. And that is not something that is normally done, to this quote's point. And we built that team and we trained a different way. We built a community so that when we were out in that water, we were more afraid of letting each other down than we were of anything else. The human emotion that we could leverage from each other was so great that the ocean was powerless against us. And that's how we went from 51 days to 35 days, going from taking 11th place to breaking the world record 9 months later. This stuff is real. I believe in it so much that I've created a whole company on it and trying to share it with as many people as possible. And so I just want to wrap up, Griff, and say I really appreciate you letting me share that. And I apologize if I went a little over, but I appreciate letting me talk.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that. Those are some very powerful quotes, and I think all of us can relate to that, Jason. So I can't thank you enough for your time today, your partnership with Crawford & Company, as well as the inspiration you generate each time you're with us. I think I've told you this before. Every time I get around you, I want to go out and purchase a rowing machine. I haven't done it yet, but it is on my to-do list. I don't think I'm ready for the Atlantic or the Pacific yet, but give me some time. So to our Crawford family that's on the call today, I thank you for your time, and I hope that the information that Jason shared resonated with you, with the challenges that we've recently faced and the potential of the uncertainty that lies ahead. We stand united as we navigate through all of this, and I'm absolutely confident that when we reach the end, we will be standing taller. There will be a quick survey that will follow this, and I appreciate any feedback that you can provide and what you would like to hear on the next episode of Cat Chat. And to Jason's point earlier, if your question wasn't raised and you have something you want to ask him, please reach out to him in the email that's listed on this presentation. Thank you again. I look forward to seeing you all on the next Cat Chat. Be safe out there.